Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling like you won, but somehow felt dirty afterward? Or maybe you've met someone who felt like your perfect soulmate within 20 minutes of meeting them. Everything they said matched your values, your jokes, and even your hidden insecurities. It felt like magic, but in reality, it was a mirror. Most people think manipulation looks like a movie villain twirling a mustache in the shadows, but the darkest tactics are the ones that feel completely natural to the person using them. In fact, you might be using one of these 11 tactics right now without even realizing it. It's not because you're a bad person, but because your personality has found a shortcut to get what it wants. Today, we're peeling back the layers of the human shadow to see which of these 11 tactics fits your specific personality. By the end of this, you'll either know exactly how to spot a predator, or you'll have to face a very uncomfortable truth about yourself. In psychology, we often talk about the Dark Triad: Narcissism, Machiavellianism, and Psychopathy. But you don't have to be a villain to use dark tactics. You just have to have an ego. Most manipulation is actually an overextended defense mechanism. Your personality type, whether you are highly agreeable, organized, or anxious, dictates your weapon of choice. We use these tactics to bridge the gap between who we are and what we want from others. Think of it as a psychological shortcut to bypass someone else's boundaries. It's often driven by cognitive biases, like the self-serving bias, where we justify our behavior as necessary. We tell ourselves we aren't hurting people, we're just managing the situation. But the moment you prioritize your outcome over someone else's autonomy, you've entered the realm of manipulation. By looking at these 11 tactics, we can see exactly which part of your personality is trying to take the steering wheel. I remember a friend who was always the first to offer help, no matter how small the task. They would drive 2 hours to pick you up or spend their last dollar to buy you lunch. But there was always a hidden price tag attached to that kindness. Later that week, if you couldn't hang out, they'd sigh and mention how exhausted they were from doing so much. Suddenly, you weren't a friend anymore. You were a debtor in a high-interest emotional loan. On the other side, there's the person who tests your no, like a fence line. They ask for a small favor, then a slightly bigger one, watching your face for the moment you flinch. It feels like they're just being persistent or passionate. But really, they're recalibrating your boundaries until they don't exist at all. They make you feel like the bad guy for finally saying enough is enough. In psychology, the martyr tactic is known as instrumental suffering. It's when an individual uses their own pain or sacrifice as a tool of social influence. It's a masterstroke for those with a high-agreeableness personality score. Because they value harmony, they won't use aggression to get what they want. Instead, they use guilt-tripping to trigger a sense of reciprocity in others. When someone does something selfless for you, your brain feels an intense biological urge to pay them back. If you don't, you experience cognitive dissonance, a mental discomfort from feeling like a bad person. The boundary pusher, on the other hand, uses the foot-in-the-door technique. By getting you to agree to a small, trivial request, they increase the probability that you'll agree to a much larger one. They aren't just being annoying. They are literally rewiring your brain's perception of what is acceptable. Your personality's desire for consistency makes it hard to say no the second or third time. I remember a guy who treated every first date like a movie premiere. He'd tell you he'd never met anyone like you within the first hour. Suddenly, your phone was exploding with good morning texts and expensive gifts. It feels incredible to be seen that clearly, doesn't it? But then, one day, the sun goes behind a cloud. The compliments stop, and the soulmate starts pointing out your smallest flaws. They look at you with a coldness that feels like a physical slap. You spend the next 3 months trying to get that first weak version of them back. You're not in a relationship anymore. You're a ghost, haunting your own life. And the worst part is, you'll do anything just to feel that warmth one more time. The psychology behind love bombing and devaluation is rooted in the schedule of reinforcement. This is the exact same mechanism that makes slot machines in Las Vegas so addictive. When a reward is predictable, it becomes boring, but when it's unpredictable, it becomes an obsession. By flooding you with dopamine early on, the manipulator creates a biological high. Then, by suddenly withdrawing that affection, they trigger a state of reward withdrawal. Your brain starts frantically searching for what you did wrong to stop the pain. This is a tactic favored by personalities high in extroversion and low in empathy. They use their social energy to overwhelm your senses, then use their coldness to exert power. You aren't staying because you love them. You're staying because your brain is literally addicted to the hope of the next hit. It's not a relationship. It's a neurological trap designed to keep you seeking their validation. Imagine standing in a room and someone tells you the walls are blue. You know they're white. You painted them yourself, but they say it with such conviction. You blink. You're always so sensitive about the decor, they might say with a patronizing smile. Soon, you aren't just doubting the color of the walls, you're doubting your own memory. Then, when you finally try to stand up for yourself, the lights go out. They don't yell, they don't fight, they just disappear while sitting right in front of you. You ask a question and they stare at their phone as if you're a ghost. The silence becomes a physical weight in the room, pressing against your chest. You'll do anything to break it, even if it means apologizing for something you didn't do. Because the only thing worse than being lied to is being invisible. Gaslighting is one of the most effective tools for a personality high in Machiavellianism. It works by creating cognitive dissonance, the mental stress of holding two contradictory beliefs. Your brain wants to believe the person you love is honest, but your eyes see a different reality. To resolve the pain, your brain often chooses the easier reality that you must be the one who is wrong. Stonewalling, or the silent treatment, is a tactic often used by those with avoidant attachment styles. By withdrawing, they trigger your social rejection pathways, which the brain processes similarly to physical pain. They are essentially using nothing to exert total control over your emotional state. When you're stonewalled, your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, goes into overdrive. You become desperate to fix the silence, which usually leads you to surrendering your boundaries. The person who stays silent isn't calm. They're using a vacuum to suck the air out of the room. Have you ever been in a group where one person always seems to be the messenger for everyone else? "I don't want to upset you," they whisper, "but Sarah said something really hurtful about you yesterday." Suddenly, you're looking at Sarah differently, even though she's smiling at you across the room. The person telling you this feels like your only true ally in a den of snakes. But notice how they never bring you and Sarah together to clear the air. They prefer to keep you in separate boxes, feeding you different versions of the truth. And if you ever decide to call them out on it, the script flips instantly. Suddenly, everyone in your circle is looking at you with pity or suspicion. You hear whispers that you've been acting erratic or unstable lately. Before you can even defend yourself, the jury has already reached a verdict in a trial you didn't know was happening. Triangulation is a classic psychological maneuver, often found in Dark Triad personalities. It works by pulling a third person into a two-person dynamic to create competition. This leverages the social proof principle. If everyone else thinks you're wrong, you must be. By acting as the gatekeeper of information, the manipulator gains referent power. They control the narrative of your social circle, making you feel isolated and dependent on them. The smear campaign takes this a step further by using confirmation bias. Once they plant a seed of doubt about your stability, others will start looking for proof. Even your normal reactions to being mistreated are framed as evidence of your instability. This is a favorite tactic of extroverted antisocial types who thrive on social hierarchies. They don't need to win an argument with you if they can win the court of public opinion first. I once knew a guy who never gave a compliment without a but attached to the end. "That's a great dress," he'd say. "It's so brave of you to wear something that bold." It sounds like praise, but it leaves a tiny, stinging needle of doubt in your mind. Then there's the person who asks you to do a task, and when you finish it perfectly, they change the rules. "I know I asked for a report, but why didn't you include the visual charts I never mentioned?" Suddenly, the finish line has moved 3 miles down the road, and you're already exhausted. Finally, there's the intellectual bully who uses big words like a blunt instrument. They don't want to exchange ideas, they want to make you feel too stupid to disagree. They sigh when you ask for clarification, as if your presence is a burden on their genius. You stop arguing not because they're right, but because you're too tired to feel less than anymore. The final 3 tactics, negging, moving goalposts, and intellectual bullying, are often used by high conscientiousness or high IQ types. These personalities value status and competence, so they use intellectual superiority to maintain a hierarchy. Negging is a form of backhanded compliment designed to lower your self-esteem, so you seek their approval. It's an emotional leveling technique. If they feel inferior, they pull you down to their level. Moving goalposts is a classic power play that prevents you from ever achieving a sense of completion. By constantly shifting expectations, the manipulator ensures you stay in a state of performance anxiety. This keeps you focused on their standards, meaning you never have the mental energy to question their authority. Intellectual bullying uses jargon and information asymmetry to silence opposition. They aren't trying to educate, they're using complexity as a shield to avoid being challenged. When someone makes you feel too slow to understand their point, they are often hiding a weak argument behind a wall of ego. They win not by being right, but by making the cost of disagreeing with them too socially or intellectually expensive. It's easy to look at this list and see the faces of people who've hurt you. You might see an ex, a boss, or even a parent in these descriptions. But the hardest part of psychology isn't spotting the shadow in others, it's spotting it in yourself. Maybe you don't manipulate, but you manage people's reactions because you're afraid of conflict. Maybe you don't gaslight, but you correct people's memories because you need to be right. Integration means looking at these dark tactics and realizing they are just primitive tools for getting your needs met. Once you see the tool in your hand, you have the power to put it down. True strength isn't having the power to move people like chess pieces. It's having that power and choosing to be honest instead. Because a relationship built on a tactic is just a house of cards waiting for the wind to change. But a relationship built on truth is the only thing that actually stands the test of time.